In the book of Acts, chapter 19, verse 10, when Paul was in Ephesus, he was preaching the gospel. And there was a young man named Epaphras who was there and heard the message of the gospel, received Christ, became a follower of Christ, and was mentored by Paul. By virtue of that, Paul sent him back home to his hometown, because Epaphras was from Turkey, sent him back and said, go preach the gospel to your family and your friends and your loved ones and to your country. Epaphras responded, went back with the gospel, planted the church in Colossae, and God blessed it enormously. But the only connection in all this was simply one man obeying the command as one belonging to Christ, sent by Christ to preach the gospel of Christ, and it touched the heart of another man who then did the same, and on it goes. And the only reason we're even here today, and the only reason that you've accepted Christ, is because somebody else down the chain did that. And it's been going on for 2,000 years. Is there people that are taking the risk, and they're walking in obedience, and they're loving others enough. They love God enough and they love others enough to communicate to you so that you could respond to and receive the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so it's a beautiful example of church planting that we have right here in the context of the book of Colossae, or the book of Colossians. Now, we have a number of other people that are mentioned. I'll go over these briefly. These members of the Colossian church. Epaphras, of course, I've already mentioned him, a native of Colossae, a servant of Christ, a fervent prayer warrior, a fellow prisoner of Christ, fellow prisoner of Paul at the time of the writing of this book, and a man that was martyred for his faith. Historically, we know that. Archippus is another gentleman. He was an elder in Colossae, a fellow soldier with Paul. He was exhorted by Paul to complete the mission. Very interesting. This guy started out really well in his walk with God and the mission of being a disciple maker and taking on this calling. And somewhere along the line, Archippus got distracted. He got distracted by things in the world, probably by family, his house, his business. We don't know exactly what distracted him, but he got pulled out of the battle. And he, probably better yet, he walked away from the battle. He didn't get pulled out. He walked out of the battle. And Paul will write him in the final chapter of Colossians in verse 17 and say, specifically call this guy out. And he said, Archippus, you received a calling. Get back to work. And I want to share something with us, because I read this and I thought, wow, that's a good word for me. I have a calling. I need to get to work. You have a calling. We need to get back to work. And I'm not saying we aren't, but I'm just saying it's an encouragement. That's what Paul was doing with this gentleman. He was saying, you had a calling. You started out so well, but you got derailed somewhere along the way, and you became so consumed and so busy with everything else that this primary mission I've given you has taken a backseat to everything else. And so he says, bring that back up to the front, and I'll take care of the rest.